everyone, this is Amanda at Amanda's Booktopia. If you're new here, welcome, and if not, welcome back. And today I'm going to wrap up everything I read the end of May and all the way through June. There are quite a few books that I read in the month of June, more so than May. And I thought May was crazy. I read a lot. However, I only had 3 5 stars. There was some 4 stars. Most of the books that I read were on the lower star range, which is not great. But there was a select few that were very good. So let's get started. And we're going to go back to the middle of May from where we left off on my last wrap up. I believe the last book I talked about back in May was Lady of Shadows. So we're going to basically pick up from where we left off. So the next book after that, I read The Striker by Anna Huang. This is a sports romance with soccer and ballet. And I love ballet in books. I had high expectations going into this because the Twisted series, it's like a 5-star series for me. And I think I just had too high expectations going in. I mean, I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. However, it wasn't what I expected. I kind of wish this was Vincent's book. I know the next book in the series will be Vincent's book, and I am so here for it. But unfortunately for The Striker, I just wasn't feeling the main male character. What was his name? Asher. Asher's his name. So, I was not really a fan of Asher. I just felt like he was really... He acted like a teenager in this book. And didn't really care about the consequences of his actions. And when you're an adult, you need to, no matter how old you are as an adult, you really should be taking care of your responsibilities and acting more your age. Because especially when you're high profile, such as he is, and you have the press following you, you really want to show your best self. I feel like he did not do that. And I did not like him for that reason. But other than that, I had a fun time with it. It would have been worse if Vincent wasn't in the book. But I am hyped for the second book. I think the next one is called The Defender. It's coming out. Is it August or September? I think September. But I am hyped for his book. So I will definitely be reading that one. And then after that, I picked up Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I read Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry. That was just okay for me. But I wanted to try a book from her that's completely out of her realm. And romanticy is not something that she normally writes. So I'm like, okay, let me try this and see if this was any better. And holy cow, was it better. I really enjoyed the story. It's like Cinderella meets The Witcher. And I totally got Witcher vibes and a little bit of Cinderella. I think it was more Witcher than Cinderella, though. But it took me completely by surprise. I had such a fun time with it. It wasn't 5-star feels, but it surprisingly really had me in a chokehold enough that I wanted to keep going. And I really enjoyed the story. And the way that it ended, I'm like, I need the next book. So I am excited to continue in this series when the second one comes out. Don't know when it will. However, I will be continuing the series because I really, surprisingly, really enjoy this one. And then the next 4 books were in my reading vlog for new releases. So I'm just going to talk about them briefly since I already did a deep dive on them in the vlog. But the first one I picked up was Dream On, Ramona Riley by Ashley Herring Blake. I've heard nothing but great things about this author, and I wanted to give my shot at it and at her books. So I've never read anything by her before. And I actually had a fun time with it, surprising. I didn't love it. Again, not 5-star feels, but I love the plus size representation in this. I'm plus size. And I love that I don't normally read a lot of sapphic, but I do enjoy a good sapphic story. So it was really fun reading it. I had some issues with a couple of things in the book itself, but if you want to hear about those, go check out my new releases vlog. It was fun. It was a solid 4 stars. I would try another book from her. Maybe I'll try the second book in this series. Or maybe I should try Delilah Green Doesn't Care. So I've heard really good things about that one too. I do have the audio for that. So maybe someday I'll try Delilah Green Doesn't Care as well, because I've heard even better things about that. And the next one I read in that vlog was The Sirens by Emilia Hart. This was, how do I describe this one? It surprised me, actually. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I read another book from this author, Wayward, and really enjoyed Wayward. Wayward is a 4 star, so I knew I wanted to try her next book. And The Sirens was actually really fun. I had a fun time with it. It was more of a sister story, more than anything. And I love a good family story, especially when it comes to sisters. So I have 2 sisters. So reading a book from that perspective was really fun. There was a bit of mystery. There was a bit of historical fiction in there, a bit of fantasy. And honestly, all 3 of those put together in one book really had me hooked from the get-go. I had so much fun. It was definitely a 4 star. I would definitely read more from this author when she puts out new books. Then the next one I attempted to read in that vlog was Enigma by Ruby Nix. Unfortunately, that was a DNF for me at like 42%. I was not into it. I felt like I was rereading Gothicana all over again. And I was not feeling the vibes. It just felt like a retelling of Gothicana. And I was not in the mood for that. And I was completely checked out of the story. I could not connect to the characters. It was just not for me. So for that reason is why I decided to DNF. And then the last, actually, there's 2 more books I forgot about. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There was 5 books in that vlog, my bad. So then the 4th one in that vlog was When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I've never read anything from Nat Cassidy before, so this was my first time. And I actually really had fun with this one. Until the last chapter. The last chapter threw my enjoyment for a loop. The last chapter was so confusing. And I did not know what the heck was going on that last chapter. Well, overall, I had a fun time with the story. It was definitely a creature feature, for sure. Like, I could easily see this one as a movie. And I vividly had, pictures and images in my head while I was reading this. I could easily see this on screen, the way it was written. So I surprisingly had a decent time with it. And I would definitely try to read more from Nat Cassidy in the future. So this was a solid 3 stars. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but it was fun. And then the next book that I read in the month of May was my own book club book, which was The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wayne, however you pronounce it. I never know. People pronounce it so many different ways. But this was a surprise. This is our dip into epic fantasy for Fiction Falls. And surprisingly, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I really enjoyed Misaki. She was my favorite character in the story, and I loved getting her background. It was just so much fun. And we did a whole live show on this book on my channel. So if you want to go check out the live show for The Sword of Kaigen, it will be in my live show tab. So be sure to go check that out if you are curious to hear everybody's thoughts on it. It was me, Clint, and Josh from Bookish Daddy. So it was a fun time talking about this book. And it was a decent story. I just didn't love it. And it felt very open-ended at the end. And it's supposed to be a standalone, and it did not feel like a standalone to me. And I don't think we're ever going to get any more books from this. which is kind of sad. Because it just was so open at the end, and I don't like open endings. So for that reason is why it was a 3-star. And then that was not included in that new releases vlog, though. That was separate. But the last book that I read in May was part of my new releases vlog, was A Fate Forged in Fire by Hazel McBride. And I am so glad I read this. I had such a fun time with this book. I did not want to put it down. I was addicted from the get-go. It was so close to a 5-star. It was almost that 5-star feeling. It was that close. Maybe I should make it like a 4.5 instead of a 4-star. They originally gave it 4 stars, but now I'm thinking 4.5. Because I really, really love this story. However, I did not like the decision making and the point of Amira, how do you pronounce her name? I do not know how to, Amira, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but I did not like her decision making, and that's the only reason why it wasn't a full 5-star. But I really had a fun time with this book. So, however, I don't know when the sequel's coming out, but trust me, I will be reading it when it comes out. Because the way that it ended, I needed the next book, like, right away. I need to know what's going to happen next. I had so much fun. It was it's a romantasy, technically. However, I didn't really feel like there was much of a romantic connection in the story. I felt like it was more of a side plot, which I am definitely okay with. I don't mind romance being a side plot, as long as the main plot is interesting enough. And in this one, it really was. And I loved it for that. And I love seeing a good romantic story where the romance is not, like, heavily featured. Because there's so much more going on in the story that I felt like needed to be told. The romance, honestly, what happened in the end, I kind of predicted a little bit. But because I had such a fun time, it didn't bother me that I predicted the end. But I cannot wait for the sequel. I will be reading it. And that's all the books I read in May, or finish out May with, I should say. And now we're going to go into June. And June had some really, really good books. Well, some were better than others. I think in June I had like either 3 5-stars, I think. 4? I can't remember. But we're going to go through all the books I read in June as well. So the first book that I read in June was Ask for Andrea by Noelle W. Ely, how do you pronounce that? She is a new favorite. Well, I read another book from her last year, Gray After Dark, and that was 2 stars. But this one, Ask for Andrea, was so much better. If you did not like Gray After Dark, give this one a shot. Because I absolutely loved it. I was gripped from the beginning to the end. It's being told through these girls. They're trying to solve their own murder. They're already dead, and they're trying to solve their own murder. And the way it all comes together, and the ending was just so powerful and impactful. These girls, they really took me on a journey, and I felt it here in my heart. And, like, it really had me sold. I could not put this one down. I think I even teared up in the end. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. So it was one of my favorites that I've read this year, besides the ones I've read in past months. This is definitely a new favorite thriller. I think everybody should be reading this one. It was just so good, and it made a huge impact on me when I read it. I think more people should read it. And then the next book I read was One by One by Frida McFadden. I've been wanting to read all of her backlists, and I'm still working on that. One by One was kind of like it was a thriller but it reminded me of Survivor a little bit, because they had to survive in the woods. And it was interesting. But I didn't connect with the characters enough to really love it. But I had a fun time with it. So it was a solid 4 stars. It was enjoyable. As a lot of Frida's books I have a fun time with in general. And this was no different. It just wasn't like the 5-star feels. But I had fun. So solid 4 stars. And then after that, I picked up Someone in the Attic by Andrea Mara. This was also another surprise. I had heard mixed reviews on this one. So I had kind of like low expectations going into it. But I surprisingly had a lot of fun with it. And there were things I did not see coming. And then there were things that I did. But it was really, really fun. And I had a good time with it. So it reminded me of a Frida McFadden book in a way. Because it had that fun aspect to it. So it's a solid 4 stars. Now I would definitely read more from this author if she puts out any more books. And then the next book I picked up was Final Girls by Riley Sager. I've been on a mission to complete his backlist, and I finally have. I finally finished his backlist. Final Girls was the last one I needed to complete from the backlist. And unfortunately, it did not work for me. I had such a hard time with this story. I tried to get through the best that I could. And there were some things that were very predictable and things that I just wasn't vibing with it and I was not loving. A lot of the times I was very bored with it. But the last 25% had me interested, which is why it was a 2-star and not a 1-star. It was so close to a 1-star. But that last little bit of the book was a little bit better than the rest of it. So it came up to a 2. So 2 stars. Final Girls is just not my cup of tea, unfortunately. And then another one that I picked up after that was Such Quiet Girls by Noelle Ely, who is the same author that wrote Ask for Andrea that I gave 5 stars to. And Such Quiet Girls is her newest release. I bought the ebook because I've been hearing good things. And I'm so glad that I did because I really happened to enjoy this one. It wasn't quite a 5-star feel, but it was like a fun ride. Like, it reminded me of another Frida book. But I had so fun reading the story. And I didn't know going into it was based off a real life story until after. But I'm like, ooh, interesting. But it was definitely a surprise. Some of the stuff that happened, I wasn't quite expecting. And we basically have 2 main characters in this book, one of which I thought would take control, and she didn't, which was a bit of a surprise. But I still had such a fun time, and it was a solid 4 stars. And then the next one I picked up was The Winter People, a Jennifer McMahon. And I've heard good things about this author in general, and my bestie Nikki seems to really like her books. I think she's the one who inspired me to want to pick this one up, The Winter People. And it was such a fun story. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. There were some historical aspects to it, which I really loved. And the fact that there's some horror in this, like, I really enjoyed the horror and the historical aspects put together. That was really, really fun. And I had such a fun time with this one. It was one of those stories where, like, it had you gripped and you couldn't understand what the heck was going on until the very end. And I happened to really enjoy doing that. Or reading that. Like, it was such a fun story. Like, things happened I was not expecting. I'm like, wow, that was such a fun one. When I finished this, I was like, okay, I need to read more from this author now. I happen to really enjoy it. So it was a solid 4 stars. I will be reading more of her books in the future. Then the next 3 books were part of my dark romance vlog. That didn't go so well. So first we have Ruthless Creatures by J.T. Geisinger. I don't think it's the author. I think it was the subject matter. Because I love this author. I really love her books. She's one of my favorite authors. Like, lately. Except, I think the subject matter of this book, I think, for me, I felt like it was mismarketed. I think it's more erotica than dark romance. Because we didn't really have much of a plot. And the little bit that we did, I felt like it was a bit of a throwaway. And it was more spicy scenes than actual stuff going on. And I just did not love it. So it was a 2-star. But if you want to check out my dark romance vlog, I talk way more about these books. And then next I attempted to pick up Her Soul's a Take by Harley LaRue. This was a DNF. I will definitely not be continuing the series. I did not like how it was so insta-lovey, and I really did not like characters. I skipped lots of stuff to get to the dialogue. It was not fun. I was not really enjoying it. I was bored most of the time. The beginning was interesting, and I thought maybe it was going somewhere, and then it just dropped off for me. It was not good. So I DNF'd it at page 244, unfortunately. And then the last book that was in that dark romance vlog was Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. People have been raving about this book, so I was excited to get to it. Unfortunately, I did not get the hype. It was very surface level. I felt like this was also mismarketed a little bit. This is also supposed to be dark romance, but it did not read dark romance. It read more like erotica. Again. I don't know, maybe it was the mood I was in at the time, or if maybe I am right and they were all just mismarketed. But for the most part, it was just not my vibe, and I did not love it. I felt like a little bit of plot that was thrown in near the end was a complete throwaway. And it was a spin that just threw me for a loop, and I'm like, came out of absolute nowhere. But it was the only part of the book that I actually enjoyed more than the rest of it. I felt like, it's hard to describe. I think dark romance, normally I love a good dark romance. But I'm thinking maybe like these were just not really dark romance. It was mostly erotica with a little bit of plot. And for me, if it's a dark romance, it needs to have all plot with a little bit of romance. So unfortunately, it just didn't quite work for me. It was a 3-star because I did like parts of the end. However, it was very surface level, and I felt like we could have dived deep into their past a little bit better and really understood the characters. I could not connect. It was weird and not for me. So, after that, I picked up another Frida McFadden book, The Crash, and all of my friends that have read it hated this book. And I could definitely see why. It was not the greatest either. Like, I kind of agreed to some a little bit, because there were parts that just were ridiculous. And I did not like some of the characters' motivations. I did not like certain characters. And it was just weird. And the twist I predicted most of it, except for this tiny twist at the end I did not see coming. I would have been a 1-star if it wasn't for that very last twist at the end, which is why it came up to a 2-star. So I'm like, wait, what? was interesting. Frida is an experiment, let me tell you. And then the next book that I picked up was A Secret Book and Scone Society by Ellery Adams. This was an interesting, cozy mystery that is usually not my vibe, but this one was kind of interesting, the way it was put together. The main character gives out books depending on how you're feeling, and like she kind of knows like when you come in to her bookstore what books to give you based off of whatever info you give her. And it was kind of interesting. I liked that aspect of it. And there were some mystery elements that were very interesting, but I did predict a little bit of the end. And it was decent. It wasn't bad. Just wasn't really a favorite. So I was kind of in the middle of the road with this one, so it was a solid 3 stars. And then the next one I picked up was The Thrashers by Julie Soto. I read both of her other books, Forget Me Not and Not Another Love Story, and really, really enjoyed those ones. I gave those ones 4 stars. The Thrashers was, I think, her first thriller. And I think she did a decent job with a thriller. I just don't think that's her best genre. But it was a quick story, YA. It went super quick. Like, I finished it in like one night, basically. And it was a fun story, slightly predictable. I mean, I'll still read more of her books, but I don't think thriller is really her genre. So 3 stars for that one. It was decent. Just wasn't great, and it wasn't terrible. And then the next one I picked up was another Jennifer McMahon book. This one is The Invited. Because I really enjoy The Winter People, I wanted to try The Invited. I know my bestie Nikki really also loved The Invited. And so I'm glad I gave it a shot because it was really, really interesting. And I really enjoyed this book. So we had some solid stuff going on in the story. Like, I was interested from the get-go. I didn't want to put it down. I wish these books were more 5-star feels because they were really good, but it just didn't quite reach 5-star potential. But I had so much fun with it, so it had to be a 4-star. Couldn't be anything less. It was just really, really fun. I love horror done right, and I felt like this was done right. I just wish it upped it a little, if that makes any sense. But it was fun. I would definitely be reading more from this author. And then the next book that I attempted to read is His Face is the Sun by Michelle Javes Forper. I probably butchered that name completely, but there's a special edition now with sprayed edges, and I wanted to excuse me. And I thought about buying it, and I really wanted to. However, I thought I would attempt to read it off of Libby first and see if I like it enough to buy the sprayed edge edition. And I'm glad that I borrowed it off of Libby first instead of actually buying it outright, because I ended up DNFing it. I really wanted to like it because it's Egyptian mythology, and I love books like that. I love mythology, and I've always been fascinated by the Egyptian stuff. And this one had promise. Like, I really enjoyed the beginning, but as we got into it a little bit more, I just got bored. And there was way too many POV changes. And I just felt like it was too many characters and too many that were following, and like the action for me kind of died off. It wasn't as fun anymore as it started out to be. So unfortunately, it was a DNF at page 256. If she comes out with anything else, I will attempt to try it. However, I can't promise anything. However, the next book was amazing. So the next book, I randomly picked this book up off of Libby. Just randomly. Just thinking, I wanted a beach read. It's summer. I wanted to try something a little bit different. And I found a romance called The Beach Trap by Allie Brady. Not realizing it's so much more than a romance. And it quickly became an absolute favorite of mine. I was thinking 4 stars for most of the book until the end, and the end is what convinced me it needed to be a 5-star. I was addicted from the get-go, so this reminded me a little bit of The Parent Trap, but with a twist. And I absolutely love The Parent Trap, and this book, I absolutely loved. This was 5 stars. I could not get enough. This was a random borrow off of Libby, and I did not expect it to love it. And I really, really did. I was obsessed with these characters. And this is mainly, even though there's a little bit of romance in the story, it's focused on a sister relationship. And that's what I really, really loved about it. I feel like more books I think we need to step away from the romance just a little bit in some books because, there's so many other types of relationships that I feel like need to be explored more. And I love seeing sister relationship books. If you have any recommendations for any sister relationship books that you think I would be into, definitely let me know down in the comments because I feel like I've been really enjoying those types of stories lately and I need more of them. Because this one was outstanding. The Beach Trap had my heart. And I love that they had HGTV stuff going on in the story because I happen to really like a lot of HGTV shows. And this was just so fun and had my heart. I teared up in the end. I feel like more people need to read this book. So if you haven't read The Beach Trap yet, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's an absolute new favorite. And then the next book that I picked up was Hunted by Darcy Coates. This was a Thrills and Chills book for June. And it was an okay story. I read one other Darcy Coates, The Haunting of Lee Harker. And that one was a 3-star for me. Hunted was another 3-star. Unfortunately, I just didn't love it. But I didn't hate it. It was kind of predictable for me, and I just didn't like the whole Lost in the Woods vibe on this one. I really did not like the characters. The characters, I didn't like them. But the plot was interesting, so it kept me going. I listened to it on audio. I mean, if it wasn't for the audio, I probably would have DNF'd it. The audio is what I like the narrator on this one. So it was okay, but nothing to write home about. So yeah, 3 stars. And then I picked up Tell Me What Really Happened by Chelsea Sidoti. This is another one of those Lost in the Woods stories. I'm starting to think Lost in the Woods stories are not really my vibe. Because every Lost in the Woods story that I read is 3 stars. I mean, I read What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. That was also 3 stars. And that's another Lost in the Woods type book. I'm starting to think what Lost in the Woods type stories are just not quite my vibe. Because I tried this one. The only reason why it wasn't lower than a 3-star was because I really loved how the story was laid out. We're being told the story through first-person interviews. And that part was what really kept me going. And I really was enjoying that part. But it was also super predictable. I predicted the end like a mile away. So, yeah, I guess it was just another 3-star. I think I need to stop reading Lost in the Woods stories. And then I picked up Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. My bestie Clint loves this book. And I think Dana and Karina read it, if I'm not mistaken. But this was and then there were nun trope in it, and it was decent, but I didn't love it. And normally I like tropes like this if it's done right. I just felt like in this one, it wasn't done right for me. I mean, I predicted the end in this one as well. Easily. At least for most of it. However, there was one part of the ending that took me completely by surprise, which is why it's not a 2-star. It's a 3-star. It would have been a 2-star if it wasn't for that last surprise at the very end. I'm like, wait, what? So, Alice Reedy has been very hit or miss for me lately. So, I don't know. I'll definitely try more of her books. Maybe there's other ones that from her that I haven't read that I would really like. I just haven't found all of them yet. There is one though that I will be talking about shortly, so stay tuned. And then the next book that I picked up was no yeah, I can't talk today. She Left by Stacey Gray. This was something. The setup was very interesting in this story. I liked the setup and why they were all in this cabin together. I was not a fan of what actually transpired. I got really bored halfway through, and I could care less about the end. I kind of skipped a lot of pages just to find out what really happened in the end. And what I predicted to happen in the end, I was right. So, like, it would have been a 1-star if it wasn't for the beginning. The beginning was enjoyable, which is why it's a 2-star. Of just the rest of it, I was so bored. I predicted the end, and it was just not a book for me, unfortunately. And then I picked up Everyone is Watching by Heather Gudenkoff. This was actually a surprise. I enjoyed it a little bit more than I expected. But I also guessed the twist at the end of this pretty early on as well. So I kind of went with a 3.5-star on this one because I really enjoyed the setup and what was going on in the story. I really had a fun time with that. I didn't want to put it down. It was a very short, quick story that I had fun with. I just predicted the end. Like, before, like, I think I predicted the end, like, about halfway through or close to it. But it was still a fun time. I would definitely read more from this author. And then next, I picked up The Cellar by Natasha Preston. And I've never read a book from this author before. I know she got really famous off of Wattpad. And The Cellar is her very first book. And I surprisingly really enjoyed it. And it was stuff happened in this story I wasn't quite expecting. However, I did feel like the end was a little bit rushed. I still had a fun time with it, but the ending, I felt, I mean, there's a lot of time jumps in the story. So even though normally for them, it wouldn't be rushed, like for in the story. But for me, I just felt like the ending happened a little bit too soon. If that makes any sense. But I still had a fun time with it, so it was a solid 4 stars. I would read more from this author, because I think she has a way with words. And then next I tried picking up Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I got so bored so fast. And I couldn't care. I just did not care about this book whatsoever. I DNF'd it so early that it's not even funny. I did not like the writing style, first of all. And second of all, like, I did not like the characters. And I just felt like, I know you're supposed, at the beginning of the book, you're supposed to set up the story. There wasn't really much setting up. And I just got bored way too fast. And it's just, I think the writing style put me off more than anything. So I just decided to DNF it fairly early. So it just wasn't the book for me, unfortunately. But then I also tried picking up They Bloom at Night by Train Thon Tran. I probably butchered that name. I'm sorry if I did. This was another DNF. Not because of the plot, more because there was not enough English. There was another. I know this author is not actually English, and she put like her own language in there. However, when I tried reading it, I couldn't pronounce anything. I couldn't understand anything. Like, I just felt like I was reading too much of the other language. Like, and I couldn't follow it. I just didn't care to continue because of so much of the other language. It threw me off, and I just couldn't get into the story, unfortunately. So unfortunately, that was also a DNF. But then I picked up The Unraveling by Vi Keelan. I have read some of her romances before, like a couple of her others that I really enjoyed. So I was excited to read a thriller from her, because normally she's a romance author, not a thriller. But this was her first foray into thriller writing, and I think she did a really good job. There was a lot of red herrings in this book. Now, like, I thought something was gonna happen. I thought it was this person or that person, and I was completely wrong. What actually happened in the end threw me for a loop a little bit. I didn't quite see it coming. I knew, like, part of, like, one of the girls in the story, I felt like she was a major part of it somehow. I just couldn't figure out how. And then when I finally figured it out at the end, I'm like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. So I really had a fun time with it. So I definitely want to read more thrillers from Vi. I know she recently had a new book come out in the thriller genre that I also want to read, because I really enjoyed this one. So I will be reading more from her. And then I picked up Gleam by Raven Kennedy. And this is the third book in the Plated Prisoner series. So I've been doing the read along with Jess from Honest Fiction and her Patreon. And I really enjoyed the story. I'm currently also reading the fourth book as we speak. And I've been enjoying the series overall. It's been fun, but not like 5-star feels so far. Like, Gleam was another 4-star. I really enjoyed how it ended. It took me completely by surprise. And I'm like, ooh, interesting setup for the next book. So I had a fun time. I would definitely be continuing the series. I mean, I'm currently reading the fourth book. I put it down for the time being just because I'm not feeling it as of right now. But I will pick it up again later and try again. But I've heard that the series gets better as you go. So maybe I will continue to love the last couple books of the series. So we will see. And then the next book was a complete surprise. So this is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. I did not think I was going to love this as much as I did. I listened to this on audio. I highly recommend listening to the audio on this one. It was so good. It built that suspense little by little as we kept going through the story. And what actually happened in the end completely blew my mind. I'm like, wait, what? What? And what did I just read? It was one of those thrillers that I think everybody needs to read. It completely blew my mind. Like, to the point where I'm like, I wish we had more books from this particular, like, setting and characters, and, like, I wish he turned this into a series. If she were to turn this into a series, I would totally continue it. Or, even better, if this was adapted. I would love to see this as an adaptation. Just because it was so, so good. Fabulous narrators. The narrators, I love the accents. And the last line delivered in the story that I listened to on audio gave me chills. And I'm like, okay, Alice Sweeney, you got me. So I will be reading more from this author, for sure. I want to get more 5-star feels, like this one. This was, like, so, so good. It completely took me by surprise. And I loved it. So I can't wait to read more from this author. And then I tried picking up my book club book for Fiction Falls for May. It is Heaven Official's Blessing by Mo Zantanzu, and I probably butchered that completely. This is a manhwa, I believe, and or something like that. And so let's say the synopsis of the book did not quite measure up. I think the synopsis sounded better than the book itself. Because the synopsis only gave, like, part of the book. And there's more to it that wasn't really put in the synopsis. And I kind of got bored after the main synopsis died down. And after our discussion of talking over with Clint on our live show on my channel, it was a 3-star. Then I lowered it to a 2-star after talking about it more with him. I don't think this is something we're going to be trying again. But, it was an experiment. Experiments don't always work, so that's okay. And then I picked up The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and this was a highly, highly anticipated read for me. Like, I had such high expectations going into this with how much I loved One Dark Window. And unfortunately, this did not quite measure up for me, which is very sad. Like, I really enjoyed the beginning of the story, and the gargoyle is absolutely hilarious. I love the gargoyle. The way he talks. And some of the stuff that he says. Like, this gargoyle is so much more wise than the rest of the characters. Honestly, they should have been listening to the gargoyle this whole time, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the setup. And however, the second half of the book kind of lost me. I did not really enjoy the second half of it as much as I enjoyed the first half. I'm not sure why that is. I mean, they were traveling to get to the different omens. But, like, I just wasn't feeling the second half of the book. And it just did not live up to my expectations, unfortunately. So, it was a 3-star. Mostly because of the gargoyle in the beginning of the book. Gargoyle, absolutely hilarious. I would read it just for the gargoyle. I will continue the series just because I wanted to read more of the gargoyle. So at some point, I will get to it, but it's not a priority. And then I tried picking up The Counselors by Jessica Goodman. I honestly could care less about this book. I got so bored so fast. I felt like, how do I put this into words? The characters are just so flat and boring. And all they want to do is talk about their rich people problems. And I could care less about the mystery. I really did not care. I truly did not care. And so I DNF'd it super early. And it just was not for me, unfortunately. And then I picked up another favorite of the month, The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau by Kristen Harmel. And honestly, this author is quickly becoming a favorite. Every book I read from her has been excellent. I read The Winemaker's Wife, which was a 5-star. I read The Book of Lost Names, which was a 4-star, and The Forest of Vanishing Stars was also a 4-star. I believe. I think I have that right. And then this one is another historical fiction, and I'm really loving this author's works. I need to read more of her backlist because there's some others I still haven't read yet. But it's about this woman who grew up learning how to be a jewel thief during World War II. And how everything comes full circle as she's much older. It's a dual timeline, too. So we're going in between World War II time and present day. And I really, really love this book so much. And about, like, the fact that she's a jewel thief was so unique to the story and so different than I was expecting. And I love that about this book. And I love the relationships. Like, how everything relates to how all the people relate to each other and how, like, things happen. I predicted a little bit of it, but it doesn't. But the fact that I predicted part of the end doesn't matter to me because of how much I love the story and how we got to that point. That it didn't bother me that I predicted it because I love the story so much. I feel like more people who enjoy historical fiction would really love this book. I could not stop thinking about this book after I finished reading it. I still think about it, even now. Like, even though this was, like, the end of June, I still think about this book. And then I just felt like it was so impactful and powerful, and I just love stories that deliver such a powerful message like that. And I feel like more people should be reading them. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this particular book. And then next I picked up What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. And I have never read a single book from this author before. And it was strange. Very, very strange. The first half was boring as heck. Second half took off and became more interesting. So I kind of landed in the middle of this one, gave it 3 stars. Even though I did not like the beginning, the second half was much more fun and interesting to get into. However, I don't think I will be continuing the series just because I feel like for me this is a one and done. I don't think I'm really invested enough to continue, but I will try other books from this author because I've heard that she has some really good ones besides this. So I will be trying others from her. And then the last book that I read for June, finally the last book, and that is The Blonde Dies First by Joelle Wellington. This was another highly anticipated read for me. It came out last year. Even though I only just got to it. And I read Their Vicious Games by her that I gave 5 stars to. I thought was fabulous. This one, however, did not quite measure up. I think I had really, really high expectations going into this one. And for me, it just didn't quite feel the same as Their Vicious Games. It was decent. It had some really interesting paranormal aspects to it. But it wasn't great by any means. I didn't feel like I was gripped the whole entire time. Like, it was just okay, in my opinion. However, I have heard she has a new book coming out that I do want to read. It sounds interesting. So I will try her next book, and then I'll decide from there if I want to keep reading her books. But so far, Their Vicious Games was the only one that I loved. The Blonde Dies First was just okay. But that is all the books I read from the last half of May and all of June. That was a lot of books that we went through. So have you read any of these? If you have, I would love to know your thoughts. If you were inspired to pick up any of these books because of my recommendation, I would love to know that as well. And if you got this far into the video and you don't feel like being chatty, why don't you leave me the Eiffel Tower for Paris, because The Stolen Life of Colin Marceau has that on the cover. And I feel like there's an Eiffel Tower emoji somewhere in there. So leave me an Eiffel Tower because I love that book so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a huge thumbs up. If you want to see more bookish content from me, make sure you smash the subscribe button down below. And I'll see you all in the next one.